Shabbat Shalom. It's really wonderful to be back. And I don't say that lightly. It's always wonderful to be here together to enjoy our spirited davening. Thanks to our daveners and our caring community, and especially after being away for 4 months on maternity leave. But of course, these past few months have been a hard time for many of us, myself included. And so it's been particularly hard to be away from community. So it's really sweet to be back here. And thank you all for the warm welcome. In thinking about the power of community, I'm reminded of a unique experience that I once had at just this time of year. As a part of my rabbinical school experience, I spent a year in Israel. And during Hanukkah, 2 of my friends invited me to join them on a trip to Turkey. Not so far away. There were cheap flights. Don't know that I'd go today, but at the time I went, it was fantastic. Our trip included a trip to see these natural rock features. We saw whirling dervishes, like a show of whirling dervishes. It was really fascinating. And we were lighting Hanukkah candles at night in our hotel room. But one of the highlights was Shabbat in Istanbul. One of my traveling companions had been involved in international limud. So she reached out to her friends there and they got us an invitation to a Shabbat meal. Thank you so much, Esther. At the home of a family member of theirs. Our hosts were warm and hospitable, and it was an incredible way to experience a Jewish community that we knew nothing about. We also went to shul, but there's something different about really being welcomed into someone's home. And just through this connection that we had, they felt comfortable extending their generous hospitality to us. And it was really quite incredible. Being part of the Jewish community means that not only do we have the opportunity to be taken in by strangers halfway across the world to celebrate Shabbat, but it also means that what happens to some of the Jewish people can impact the rest of us deeply. On November 24th, when the first group of hostages was released as part of the ceasefire deal with Hamas, one of them was Chana Katsir from Nir Oz. Just earlier that week, Islamic Jihad had announced her death. And yet here she was. She was released just in time for her 78th birthday, which was this past week. I can only imagine the pain that her family had been in just days before, and the relief upon seeing her alive, despite her dire health condition. It's not good right now. And yet, at the same time, her story adds to the uncertainty that the families and friends of other hostages, and so many of us by extension, may be feeling as we wonder what is happening to them and if they will ever emerge alive. I've never read Parashat Va-yeishev this way before. In Parashat Va-yeishev, Jacob loses his beloved son, who's thrown underground and is taken into captivity. And as far as Jacob knows, Joseph leaves home one day. He doesn't return. He leaves behind a bloody coat. Jacob is tormented by his son's disappearance, by not knowing if he's alive or dead, and by his speculations about what must have happened to him. When Jacob's family tries to comfort him, he refuses to be comforted. He says he will go to his grave in deep mourning for his son. Rashi suggests that Jacob's agony is so intense, not just because Jacob thinks his son is dead, but because he does not know what has happened to him. Although Jacob says that a wild animal must have killed Joseph, it's just speculation. Rashi gives an alternative reading of Jacob's words that makes Jacob's statement into a prophecy, something that'll happen in the future rather than the past. And it suggests that maybe Jacob has some sense that his son may be alive, but in danger. Dina Weiss, a teacher at the Hadar Institute, writes about this midrash. She says, Yaakov both knows and doesn't know that Yosef is alive. He acts like a mourner and he talks like a mourner, but his words have a double meaning and his actions betray the truth. Yosef is missing, but he's still alive. His brothers never say that he is dead. His father never says that he is dead, but we, the reader, know exactly where he is. For Jacob, the uncertainty torments him. The pain of not knowing what might be happening to his son, of not knowing where he is, of wondering whether he will see him again, consumes him and makes it impossible to move on. We all know what it is to feel painful uncertainty. We feel it with the hostages. We feel it with the soldiers serving in the IDF, many of whom, as we've seen, are our friends and family. And we feel it in our own lives in America as well. Anti-Semitic incidents at college campuses have seemingly become widespread. Organizations that we thought were established to protect people seem to exclude Jews from the people they think are worth protecting. Only days ago, we heard the presidents of 3 major universities fail to unequivocally repudiate calls to commit genocide against Jews. On Thursday, a man was arrested after firing a gun on the grounds of Temple Israel in Albany. Who knows what might happen next? In times of uncertainty, one response is to summon up hope. Hope and faith that the way things are is not the way they will always be, but that hope can feel elusive. How do we find it? How do we believe in it? In the case of Jacob, his uncertainty and his helplessness certainly were painful, but according to a beautiful reading by Dina Weiss, his bond with his son was felt by both of them, and it brought Joseph comfort and strength across the distance. She points to another midrash. This one's about Joseph. The midrash relates that when Joseph was in trouble, he sees or possibly summons the image of his father's face. In the vision, Jacob reminds his son who he is and how he should behave. Jacob's image gives Joseph strength and courage and helps him to be the best version of himself. Even when they're brutally separated, the father and son were emotionally connected during that difficult time. They were alive. They were thinking about each other. And this gave them, and at least gave Joseph, hope and strength. During this time of pain, it is so important to build and maintain our connections. We can find strength and courage in our connections with our people here and around the world. We can find it in our connections with Jewish tradition and history, and in remembering that we're part of something larger than ourselves. We've been here before. I've been incredibly moved by the way that Israeli civil society has jumped into action to support each other. I think many of us are aware of the ways that people have dropped their work and taken on the tasks of creating schools for displaced communities, providing mental health resources for traumatized survivors, looking out for neighbors who have family members serving in the reserves, and so on and on and on. But it's not just Israelis. Jewish day schools in our area have opened their doors for free to Israeli children. And so many of us have rallied to express and offer support for our fellow Jews around the world and for each other. It's not just the actions that help, It's the solidarity. It's the caring. It's the sense of belonging with and to each other that inspires us to jump in, and that also gives and shares courage. Just as Jacob's love gave Joseph strength, so too we also have the opportunity to give strength to each other and to amplify the voices of people who aren't being heard. And like Joseph, we have the opportunity now to try to live up to the people we want to be. We're in the midst of the celebration of Hanukkah. There's a debate in the Talmud about how to light the Hanukkah candles. See some knowing nods, right? If you think about it, the miracle of the oil is that the oil lasted a certain amount of time, so there was less of it over time. So it stands to reason that you might think, well, we should light 8 candles the first night because we've got 8 nights worth of oil to go. And that's what Shammai says to do. He says you light 8, 7, 6, etc. But the students of Hillel were not comfortable with that logic because it's depressing. When it comes to matter of holiness, we should always try to ascend. How depressing would it be to go from all the light to just 1 candle? Instead, they said, we increase the light, we increase the holiness, we increase the joy each night. When we come together, we create light and we create joy. When we light a Chanukiah, we use another flame to do so. We use the shamash. It shares its light with the other candles, and we have the potential to share our light with each other. We can create that warmth and joy that we want to see, that we want to exist in the world. On Thursday night, many of us will come together for a communal Chanukiah lighting in the center of Lexington. We will join together with Temple Isaiah and with Chabad of Lexington in the center of town to combine our warmth and our light and to share the joy of connection and mutual support. May we find strength, support, and courage in our connections to each other, the Jewish people, and to the whole world. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Urim Sameach. Happy Hanukkah.